Your bank actually loses money by having you as a customer. And in this video, I'm going to explain why. So first things I'll say is that it depends on how much money you make. If you're very wealthy, then your bank probably actually makes money by having you as a customer. But the vast majority of Americans, like, 50 or 60%, live paycheck to paycheck, right? So maybe their bank balance goes up to $3,000, but then it's back down to zero by the end of the month, I'm sure a lot of people watching this can resonate, right? So you got to think about, how does the bank make money? Well, the bank makes money by loaning out your money, right? For a little interest. So if you have no money, the bank's making no money off of you, It's pretty simple. It really doesn't take a genius to figure this out, Even if you have a little bit of money in there, what you might think is a lot of money. Let's say you have $50,000 in your savings account. For a lot of Americans, that's actually really good. That probably puts you in the top 10% of people as far as personal finance, right? It sounds crazy, but that does, right? But then you got to think the bank's only making 1 or 2% at the end of the day off of your money, even with fractional reserve banking, which I've explained in other videos. So 1 or 2% of your $50,000 is nothing, You're talking about $500 here, $1,000 here. But when you go into the bank, there's like 5, 6 tellers, there's plenty of employees. You got to think about, like, what is the bank's burn rate? And the reason I'm filming this video is because I just went to the bank. I use a credit union, so mine's free, right? And I recommend you use a local credit union if you can. But this still, even if you're paying, a monthly fee of $5 or $10 for your bank account, this still applies. At the end of the day, you're costing the bank a lot of money. You have to think about, there's a whole network of ATMs. You can withdraw money for free at any time. If it's an out of network ATM, maybe you pay $2 or $3. But if you actually think about the convenience that you're getting from that, having, there's millions and millions of ATMs across the country, and that's just ATMs. Not only, you have to think about, like, I was at the bank getting some checks printed, they printed the checks for me. I went in, I needed a little bit of cash, so I got $30 out, and I get all these services, and I never pay a dime. And, I really don't have enough money in my checking account for the bank to be making any money off of me, right? So how do the banks make their money? Well, it's because there's people who are a lot wealthier than you, right? There's people who actually are banking millions of dollars with the bank. And not only that, but as I've explained in other videos, through fractional reserve banking, the bank can basically turn $1 million into $10 million or so. But they're not messing around with your little, $50,000 or $10,000. There's not really much in it there for them. So it's something people don't think about, but most customers of banks are probably a net loss for them. It's really only the people who have millions or tens of millions of dollars that give the bank something to even work with to make money, right? And one other thing I wanted to say in this video is this is by no means a defense of banks. Please don't take this as me, arguing that banks are, doing something charitable by offering you, banking so free. And it also should be noted that this is, I was using Americans as an example, and this is kind of an American thing. There's still a lot of the world that's unbanked and doesn't get this completely free, convenient use of the modern banking system, right? So that's pretty much all I wanted to say in the video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you've thought about this before or what you thought about the content you received from this video. And thank you for watching.